It's a tremendous pleasure to be here today. Maybe I ought to begin by telling you a story. She mentioned she was surprised that I was on the Olympic basketball team. Well, that might be my first Russian story tonight. When I was selected for the U.S. Olympic basketball team back in the Paleolithic era, back in 1964, I thought we'd end up playing the Soviet Union, the then Soviet Union, in the finals of the Olympic Games. And so I went to a Russian professor here, and I said, could you give me a few words in Russian that I could use in case I get into trouble out there in a game against the Soviets? And he said, well, what do you want to know in Russian? I said, well, how about, hey, big fella, watch out. So he gave me the words in Russian. Sure enough, we get to the finals of the Olympic Games. My man is 6'7", and he weighs about 240. I'm my present height, and I weigh about 195 pounds. About 8 minutes into the game, he cracks me with an elbow up along my upper chest and my lower neck, and I momentarily lose my voice. And then I remember what the professor said. And so I look him right in the eye, put on my meanest face possible, and I say, Будьте, осторожны! Which, liberally translated, means, hey, big fella. Watch out. Now, a funny thing happened, because up until that moment, the Soviets had called all the plays verbally. But after that moment, since they thought I understood Russian, they stopped talking to each other. We went and won the gold medal. So that was the beginning of it, that's for sure. During my years in the Senate, I spent a lot of time on Russia, beginning with your briefing book, Anne-Marie. I thought about it, studied it, traveled there frequently, got to know many Russian leaders, and met many average Russians. I remember I was leading a small delegation to Russia one time, and on the delegation was Bob Kerrey, a senator from Nebraska, and Jim Leach, Princeton graduate here, worked here at the Woodrow Wilson School, who was at that time a congressman from Iowa. And as the delegation leader, I had to begin to shape all the conversations, so I tried to break the ice. We were meeting, this is the time of perestroika, and we were meeting with the largest private chicken producer in Russia, outside St. Petersburg. And so I began, you always try to find some way to hook in with the person on a personal basis, whatever. So I said, well, Mr. Petrov, we have a saying in the United States that those who raise chickens raise hell. And I look at Leach from Iowa and Kerry from Nebraska, and they looked at each other as if to say, we do? But Mr. Petrov went totally blank, very awkward, said nothing. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And I said, well, Mr. Petrov, and we went on to talk about chickens and farming and economics. And so when we left there, I said, well, when we had the thing, I asked our interpreter, when we had things with Mr. Petrov, what happened in there? He said, well, your interpreter didn't quite interpret what you said precisely. I said, what do you mean? He said that you said that those who grow chickens go to hell.